Bill, it's only been an hour now since voting has closed. Are we getting any early indication of who might be pulling ahead?
No, Bev, it's looking rather subdued behind me tonight in Manila. That's because the official count of the presidential votes doesn't commence until tomorrow lunchtime. Tonight is all about tallying those votes and transferring them to the control of the central election officials. Interestingly enough, a lot of the voting here takes place on machines rather than ballots. There have been reports of dozens of voting machines malfunctioning, but in a country as large as the Philippines, perhaps that's not such a particularly big problem. Both sides too, the campaign of Bongbong Marcos and the campaign of Leni Robredo, are on high alert for any voting irregularities. So we would expect in the coming days that both sides will be making accusations. But we won't really get much of an idea, we don't think, until very late tonight when some preliminary results might start to come out. In the meantime, though, we have been speaking to voters in central Manila today. Here's a little taste of what they had to tell us.
I don't feel like anyone is the right person to be the next president of the Philippines, so I just left it blank.
Bongbong Marcos!
Bongbong Marcos is going to win. Why? Why do you like him?
Very strong! Most qualified and deserving!
I don't like Bongbong because, the history, of our father, of his father.
Yeah, Bill, talking to voters there. And it is interesting, the fact that Ferdinand Marcos's dynasty could be continued when you consider how much that family plundered resources of the Philippines. It's quite interesting. So how strong was the turnout?
Yeah, the turnout today was predicted to be large, around 80% of the country's 60 or 65 million or so registered voters. By all accounts, anecdotally, looking at the very long lines that were stretching around voting areas in Manila. Also, we've seen footage from other parts of the country. In Cebu, for example, people were still lining up with just minutes to go before the polls closed, and the polling times were extended this year. So that indicates the turnout was as big as expected. The interesting thing about this is you would think that a large turnout would mean a tightly contested race, but the opinion polls have been consistent for a very long time coming into this election that Bongbong Marcos, the son of the dictator Ferdinand Marcos, would win this and would win easily. So that perhaps, the turnout perhaps reflects a huge number of, or enthusiasm and support for him. On the flip side, there were some pollsters, Bev, who told us that they're coming into today was still a large number of undecided voters. If they all went for Leni Robredo, then maybe she has an outside chance of pulling this off.
Interesting. So you talked about perhaps some preliminary indication by the morning. When do you think a result will be known?
Well, last time around, when Rodrigo Duterte won the 2016 election, by about 1 a.m. local time, the trend of the early tallies indicated that he would win. So we would expect something similar tonight. Late into the evening, there might be enough of a trend. As I said, the opinion polls suggest it should be Bongbong Marcos. If it's not, I can't really imagine what the reaction would be here, because everyone has seen those polls and the expectations are that he will win. The question then, Bev, becomes what would Bongbong Marcos do if he is the president of the Philippines for the next 6 years? Because during the campaign, he avoided tough interviews with journalists. He didn't even turn up to the candidate debates. He basically campaigned on social media, on platforms with content that he could control. And for that reason, he really hasn't outlined a particularly broad vision or detailed vision of what 6 years under the younger Marcos could mean for the Philippines.